Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Pursuit Podcast. I'm your host, Grayson Garvin. My guest on today's episode is Mike Baas, Regional President of Houchens Insurance Group. Mike began at the company headquarters in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and then was tasked and has now established the company presence in Nashville and has positioned them as a force to be reckoned with. Mike has experienced significant highs and lows in his career, but his demeanor and humility shine through. I hope you enjoy the interview. So without further ado, let's get to it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Pursuit Podcast. I'm your host, Grayson Garvin. And today, my guest is a good friend of mine, Mike Baas. Mike, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm super excited about our conversation.
Grayson, great to see you. I'm honored to be here. Grateful to be with you for the next bit.
Well, it's going to be fun. And I was thinking back to some of our previous times together. And, you know, in some ways, I've really looked up to you and what you've built at Houchens Insurance. Now, I'll be excited to have you tell a little bit more of that story. But more than that, you're one of those people that, and they're few and far between, but you're one of those people that you just feel really good after having spent time with you. And so I'm really excited for you to be able to share a little bit more of your story and background and wisdom with our audience this afternoon.
Thank you. It's the nicest thing anybody said about me in a long time. So I received that well. Thank you.
Great.
It was always a pleasure to be with you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start. Tell us kind of where we find you today. Tell us a little bit about your family. Tell us a little bit about your work, what you do. We'll hone in on a few of those, characteristics here in just a couple minutes, but give us a little high level overview of you and your family and what you do vocationally.
Yeah. So, again, thank you. My primary vocation is, I will be Stephanie's husband of almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years in October.
Amen. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. It's worthy of celebration for me anyway. I hope she feels the same. We met, after we both finished our undergrad at Western Kentucky University, and dated a few years, and were married 2 years after we met. And we are the proud parents of William. Call him Will. He's a soon to be 16-year-old at Brentwood High School. He's a sophomore, plays soccer. Just a ton of fun, man. He keeps us running, and he can now not only look me in the eye, but he probably won't listen to this, so he can. I think physically he can overpower me now too. And then we've got another son, Benjamin. We call him Ben. He's an 8th grader at Brentwood Middle School, 14 years old. So that's the joy of my life, man. That's my main focus. Kind of scary. This past week, we bought our first vehicle, for Will, and he's going to get his license in a few weeks. So I know you're a little bit behind me in that regard, Grayson, but I tell you, man, it's a different season of life and a different experience. So yeah, that's the family. Man, I'm just so proud of them. I'm proud of who they are. And then my vocation, work-wise, I'm the regional president for Houchens Insurance Group. I oversee and have leadership responsibilities for 4 of our 9 offices on the property and casualty side. But first and foremost, I'm a producer. I serve clients, advise clients, and manage a book of business as well.
That's awesome. Well, hearing your pride too for your family really resonates. And, again, I know that you're lucky to have them and they're lucky to have you. Walk us through too a little bit more of, and I've heard this before, but I really want our audience to hear this. Insurance can be a really tough business, and it's one where if you get the snowball big enough, so to speak, and you get it rolling down the hill, it can be a really beautiful thing, but getting the snowball built can be quite challenging. And so I'd love for you to just tell a little bit of your story of how you kind of wound up, in insurance at Houchens, which hasn't always been that name, and then how you've kind of risen through the ranks to get to where you are today.
Yeah. So I've been with the organization. I'm a little bit of a unicorn in this regard. I've been with our organization for 26 years, and I'm only 47. So you can do the math there. I started with the organization when I was still in school at Western Kentucky University as an intern. My younger brother actually got me my position as an intern. I had been previously working nights at the Corvette plant in Bowling Green. It just wasn't a healthy environment for a college student. He turned me on to the opportunity and I jumped at it. I was an intern for about a year and a half. And the gentleman who offered me a full-time position is still my mentor to this day. He's a partner of mine, uh, but he is a mentor, godfather to my youngest son. His name's Brian Sewell. Brian hired me in the surety division of our organization. At the time, we were known as Van Meter Insurance. I mean, I just, we were, that was 1999. I think I graduated in Western Kentucky, and we didn't have a real onboarding process. We didn't have a formal training program. It was, hey, look, this is the product you're going to be responsible for growing a book of business in, and get to work. And really, the internet wasn't yet right, and the internet wasn't really up and running yet. So we relied on phone books and maps, and we would just go and drive and call on businesses, and that in that season of my life, it was primarily construction related. And I was fortunate. Brian was a great mentor, still is. He showed me a lot of things that it took to be successful, just in the approach and how we serve clients and how we really focus our day, start to finish. Had a lot of success early in my career. Was validated, and in our world, that is when you become no longer on a salary position and you are entirely on commission. And that's when things can really start to pick up steam. So I was validated quickly in under 2 years. In spite of myself, it was just work and calling on business and trying to find opportunities to serve those well. And 2001, some things happened economically that are still known as the Great Recession at times.
Yeah, not good.
Not good. And so Brian and I had built a pretty successful, he already had a successful book, and we had built it up even more together. And in 2001, the market just dropped out. Some of our significant partners on the insurance carrier side exited that segment of business. And literally within about 6 weeks, our business went from 800,000 in revenue down to 200,000. And Grayson, that was, man, it was scary one because I was 23, 24 years old, thought everything was easy and right in the world. And you wake up and foundationally in our business, it had crumbled, quite honestly. And so I went from a healthy position financially with the firm to, and in a couple months, in a deficit position. My commission account was negative. We had lost 3/4 of our business. And that was a real pivotal moment in my career, early in my career. You'll hear me probably reference Brian a lot throughout our conversation. Funny story. So he walks by, I was still in a cubicle at the time, and he walks by, I didn't know he walked behind me, and he had seen me working on my resume because I just didn't, I was hopeless. I didn't know what I was going to do. And never faced this kind of adversity before. And he didn't say anything. Interestingly enough, at that time, Grayson, he didn't say anything to me. A couple of days later, he and I were on the road together. We're actually coming to Nashville. We had an office here to see some of our staff. And on the way back, I'll never forget, we're climbing up Ridgetop, just north of Millersville. And he says, "So what's your plan with that resume, Mike?" So what are you talking about? He said, "I saw you working on your resume the other day. Are you going to quit me?" And I just lost it, man. It was just one of those moments where I'd been so stressed and so empty emotionally. I just one of those ugly cry moments. And man, I did. I just kind of poured it out to him and told him, I said, "Man, I don't know what to do." And he said, "I want you to sleep on it, but tomorrow morning, meet me in the office, 6:30. He said, "We're going to talk and we're going to lay out a new plan in my future." And we did. I went and met him the next morning, and I recommit. He asked me to commit. He said, "Give me a year. We're going to change what we're doing. We're going to start to sell insurance, property and casualty insurance also." But the most important, most pivotal thing that we did that morning, Grayson, is we wrote out 5 goals that morning. We wrote out how much new clients we were going to bring in revenue. We wrote how big our book of business was going to be a year from now. We wrote out how much business we were going to refer to other partners cross sell, if you will. And we wrote how much life insurance we were going to sell because that was always a requirement in the organization. And the last thing, we wrote what my commission account balance was going to be. And at the time, it was a negative almost 20,000. And we wrote $5,000 on it. And that's the first time I ever saw the power of goal setting and writing out goals. And we kept that in front of us. Every day I saw it when I walked in. And wouldn't you know it, a year later, we hit or eclipsed every single one of those. And that's really been a pivotal moment in my life for a lot of reasons, but primarily it showed me the power of goal setting.
It's a really powerful story. How would you say, again, you spoke to it a little bit at a high macro level, but do you mind digging into some of the emotions too that were being felt? And I can, imagine what those were, but again, you're at work filling out your resume. You have gotten some, again, some quick licks, relatively speaking, in the industry, and then your commission accounts at negative $20,000. What is a young kid who, to be honest, I mean, data shows that you're probably not even fully, developed yet mentally. How do you deal with that? Getting to the place where then to your point, eclipsed all of the goals that you guys set out for.
Yeah. So I had never really faced um, a sense of despair before in my life. I mean, and always had a relative amount of success. A lot of things in life, it always come easy to me. I was always able to have great friends around. I was able to make my way through school. I didn't excel because quite honestly, I didn't put enough effort into it, but I still got through it well. Work came pretty easily to me because I enjoyed what I did. It was relational, but I also saw value in what I was doing every day. And so that came easy to me, and it made the actual work we did every day to grow a business easier to perform. And so when all of a sudden, Grayson, not only are your legs coming out from underneath you, man, my spirit was broken. And because I never faced that kind of, I call it what it is, it's really a bit of failure and adversity at that level. And so I think what really happened to me is I was challenged to the core of who I really was, what my identity was. And hey, look, I wasn't very happy with what I saw, and where I was and who I was at the time. So when that kind of adversity hits and you're not in a good place foundationally, and you may not have the best community of people around you, uh, it it was spirit breaking. Uh, and if you've ever been in a position or state of despair, uh, man, the evenings are really tough because the sun comes up the next day and you have to do it again and you don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
And you don't look forward to the grind. And that's what was the hardest part is it had not just broken my spirit, but it really stolen a lot of joy from what I did every day. And so it was just a dark place for several months.
Yeah, for sure. Well, tell me too, because obviously you mentioned that early morning interaction, goal setting. What other things about your habits and about your psyche and about your mental state changed over that next year? Or what things about your environment changed to help you reach those goals and continue to grow on from there?
Yeah, biggest thing that happened that morning was Brian reinstilled confidence in me that I could do this job and do it well. That it wasn't me as an individual that failed. There was a lot of things that happened that led us to the position we were in. And so I was so grateful to have somebody to speak that truth into me, but also that cast a vision uh, for a greater place than where we were that day. But not just cast a vision, but show us a path of how to get there. So we wrote those goals down, and then we went through the exercise. Okay, what do my actions every day have to look like for me to hit those. And so you start big and you work your way down, right? You start, okay, if the number's $100,000 in new revenue this year, well, that means I've got to write, 8,000 plus a month, in new revenue. Well, that means a little over 2,000 a week. So what kind of activity does it take for me to have those opportunities? So we just boiled everything down to actionable steps every day.
Right.
So I knew at the end of every day, I'd write out what the next day looked like. I come in, I hit the ground running. These are the things I could control. These are the things I would do. And, and that's what really set us on a better path. And I think anytime you're instilled, when you come from a bad place and you're instilled with confidence in somebody that believes in you, and gives you hope, not just um, for the future where you go, oh, hey man, you can be great at this. And he was great at doing that consistently, and then just showing me always how to be better as a man and as an insurance professional.
It's huge. Reminds me of several things, but one of which you mentioned, it being a little bit of failure. We've talked about this in previous episodes of the podcast, but there are so many quotes, there's so many examples of where, true failure, and this, what you're saying is also a good example of this. Like true failure is quitting. True failure is not getting back up off the mat. Whereas, I mean, that sounds like a pretty dark place, but inevitably you didn't fail because you got back up. You got into the office that next morning at 6:30, and you probably now, if you would be able to tell that self what you guys have been able to accomplish collectively, I don't want to speak for you, but I would just imagine that you probably wouldn't believe you. Um, would be my expectation, but I think that's just such a good point that like you could have quit, you could have gone and taken a different job, you could have taken the quote easy way out, but you didn't, and it's pretty it's pretty amazing what you guys, like I said, have been able to accomplish. It's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Well, then the second thing too on that is that I just believe, and this comes from my, I think, athletic background, being around teams, is, we're just better together,
Mhm.
and, Brian came alongside you in a time of need and was able to lift you up. And I know a lot of the folks that work with and under you, it's like you've done that in spades with all the people that report to you. And I think it's just an intentional process that, we all need to have. That's like, yeah, we're strong potentially by ourselves, but we're way stronger and we can go way farther and way faster together. And I think that's just another great example of that.
Yeah, thank you. And that's really one of the great joys I have today are the people I get to lead and help mentor and develop. And man, when you see other people that you have some influence in their lives and you start to see them become really the best version of themselves, not only vocationally, but more importantly to me, how they are and in my circle, they are men primarily that I mentor,
Yeah.
uh, but to see the husbands that they are, to see the fathers that they are, to see the communal impact they have, man, that's where my joy comes from. A lot now is just seeing how those guys are thriving and being their best self.
Yeah. It's huge. It's huge. So that kind of brings me into the next part of your story. Another kind of watershed moment that I've heard you describe before is, you uprooted your family from Bowling Green and you came down to Nashville, and y'all had an office that was underperforming, and you were tasked with essentially revamping what was going on here in Middle Tennessee. Tell us a little bit more about what that was like to move your family and kind of what that journey's been like.
So that it's been again, I don't mean to overuse the term, but it has been a great joy these last 7 years. Um, so we had an office that just, it wasn't at all performing in a fast pace. I mean, this market in Middle Tennessee, right? In my opinion, there's not a better place in the country to live and to be. It's a vibrant, growing, uh, just evolving community of varying business and industry. And we just weren't growing and getting the most out of the team here. And so I had been at that point in Bowling Green with the organization for 19 years. We had built a large team at that point. I was a part of, and having, a lot of success. Our organization was, Stephanie and I were, we just built our dream home. Our boys were doing great in school, and they were 7 and 8 years old. And yeah, the opportunity came, and one night we were on a golf trip. A bunch of the guys from the office, they said, "Hey, look, there's going to be a transition in our Nashville office, and we'd like for you to move down there and see if you can really turn it into something special." And Stephanie and I, oddly enough, we met with so that was a Friday. Her and I discussed it throughout Friday night, Saturday. We met with our priest Sunday morning before church, and Monday we were ready to go. And I think the biggest reason we were ready to go, Grayson, and to do it, our boys were in a great spot, but it was a time where it just felt like there was an opportunity to give so much more back to the organization that had given me so much for the prior 19 years. And really, I mean, who doesn't want to be in Nashville, right? So,
Yeah.
uh, so we moved down, and that first year, I brought several young folks who were interns with us at the time, and then a couple of their friends. There were 6 of us that came down to Nashville together, and myself and 5 junior members of the organization that collectively, I'm not sure, could spell insurance at the time. And we came down and just threw ourselves at our jobs and our work and in the community. And, I challenged the guys every day. I said, man, every week, just walk into a room where you don't know anybody. Don't talk about insurance. Just go meet as many people as you can. Don't ask for anything. Just go be seen, meet folks, and see how we can serve everyone else. But the real reason that we're still here 7 years later, and I have to give all the credit to my wife. Our boys were 7 and 8 when we moved down, and she told me, and I still get a little choked up about this when I tell the story. But when we first moved down, she said, "Mike," she said, "I'll give you 5 years." She said, "I've got the house. I'm going to tell you when I need you, but you go make your family proud, and you go make the organization proud, and build this thing." And she said, "I've got you. I'll handle this. You go, and I'll let you know." And just to have that kind of support and the freedom that gives you to go and just, give your best every
Yeah.
single day, and know that, man, I don't have to sweat everything that needs to be done at home. Not that I wasn't active and engaged, but
Sure.
she just let me know, "Hey, look, this is your unique ability and calling to grow this." And we believe God put us here to do that, to make an impact on
Yeah.
people and the community, and to have that kind of freedom to charge forward and really pour into the community and the people that walked in these doors every day. That's the biggest reason why we're still here and still have an office to walk into.
Yeah. That's unbelievably powerful. And, kudos to Stephanie for articulating that first and foremost. But I think for those of us that are married, it requires a spousal relationship like that for anyone that's building anything. And I appreciate you articulating that, because yeah, it can be incredibly powerful. And if you don't have that, the drag can be indescribable as well. And so yeah, at least, again, you're a male, I'm a male, our spouses are, you know, masterfully involved, behind the scenes in what's going on to allow us the flexibility and the support, and being our biggest cheerleader to help us accomplish what we're able to. So that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it was. And those early years were really hard, Grayson, because there was not only a youthfulness to the team when it came just from a product knowledge standpoint, but really this was a team of people that professionally just didn't was immature in how to carry themselves with certain interactions and
Yeah.
settings, and there was a huge learning curve. And you talked about the term failure earlier, and man, we believed that failure was welcome here. As long as we learned from it every day, and the concept of failing forward was alive and well here early on.
Yeah.
But I think what really you read that not only they've all been successful, every one of them are still here today, and they're all thriving, not just professionally, but personally too.
Yeah.
Is one thing that was poured into me early was, look, you are the one that is the standard bearer as a leader, so they are going to emulate everything you do. So if you're going to go and ask them to make certain amount of calls or to walk into association meetings and not know anybody, you better be leading from the front in that regard.
Yeah.
And we did, and that's why I'm so proud of the team today, is because they embraced being coachable. They embraced, I always tell them and anybody that walks in these doors, three things that are all I ask of you every day. Have a great attitude. When you walk in this door, just have a great attitude, because you get to work with people you love, and you get to serve people you like doing business with. Great attitude. Give your best effort today. And some days that looks different. Some days we're not feeling our best. Some days things hadn't gone great at home, but just bring your best effort today, and then be coachable. And they were that every single day. And that's why it's so neat and I'm so proud of them. I know, man, I get a big smile on my face every time I get to talk about our team.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, what you're speaking to is culture, right? And you guys had to essentially reinvent the culture. I think back to, again, my time at Vanderbilt baseball specifically. I wasn't quite part of that reinvention there, but culture precedes success, culture precedes winning. And there's an immense amount of intentionality that has to go into being able to do that. Um, and you guys have certainly done that. For those that aren't in the Middle Tennessee area, their reputation precedes them, especially on the culture side. And so, do you mind walking us through a little bit more about you being in a leadership position in the Nashville office, how you think about culture and impacting not only your team but also the community that you guys are involved in?
Sure, certainly. So, uh, culture, you hit the nail on the head. It's everything. Right? I think was it Peter Drucker that said culture eats strategy for breakfast, which is just such a great quote. And uh, for me, in this office 7 years ago, the culture was not healthy. And one of my personal philosophies is I believe that uh, you cannot serve well and be in a toxic frame of mind at the same time. Those don't exist. And so once we got our arms around where the environment was here, where the culture was, one of the very first things I did as we rewrote some core values here, and they were all centered around the spirit of service.
Yeah.
We still use those in Houchens Insurance Group today. We call them the 3 C's of service. We exist solely to serve our clients, to serve our co-owners and employees, and to serve our communities. And so what we started doing right out of the gate was we started having volunteer days. And it was amazing when we would go out and serve in our community together. Just for 3 hours, we would take the middle part of the day and we would go serve at the rescue mission or over at my buddy Chris Whitney's place at One Generation Away. Or we've served.
I've been a part of it with you before.
You have served with us before. And when you go to serve someone outside of yourself who, without judgment, without knowing why they're in the situation they're in, but just to smile and love on them. And it may be as simple as a spoon of mac and cheese and a lunch line. And that just feeds and fuels joy, right? And so that's what we started doing first, is we just believed, and I believe, man, if we could get outside of ourselves and get out of our own way and just go serve well together, that would immediately start to impact the culture. It did.
Yeah.
And so we just continued that. And we always find reasons, and we still do this to this day, to just be present together. We start our Mondays with a team huddle every Monday morning. We are always reading either a book together or discussing a podcast to, in some way, personal spiritual development. So every Monday I started with a team going over what we're doing this week, how we can help each other, and then how can we grow together in some form of learning. And that's really been at the root of how we've evolved the culture here. And then probably the neatest part, Grayson, is just watching the community here inside Houchens Insurance Group just do this, and watching the love that is just built and grown amongst our team and our people, and watching people just support, lift each other up. Somebody's in a bad rut, whether that's just having a bad run of business or some things aren't going well outside of here, watching the other folks just grab them, pick them up, and drag them along uh, until they're in a better frame and spirit. So yeah, it's worked here.
It's huge. It's huge. Well, again, what you're, again, you're talking about intentionality, and the intentionality with which you take building the culture creates success. It's a process orientation as opposed to a results orientation. I talk about that a lot in, a variety of different areas of life. And it's ironic that when you are focused on the process as opposed to the results, how the results end up taking care of themselves.
So well said.
So as you sit here today, again, I appreciate again your vulnerability and telling your story and kind of where we find you. How how do you define success for yourself? Because the the thesis of this podcast is that it's easy to look at somebody that's successful and see where they are and fail to really recognize what it's taken to get there. And I think it's easy to look at you as, you know, a, a business owner, as a leader, growing a very profitable, healthy insurance organization. But it's clearly taken you a long time to get there. It's taken some detours, some speed bumps. There's been a lot of iterations. It's definitely not been a linear progression, which I think that can be said for anyone that's had success. But as you sit here now, as a business owner, as an individual, as a family man, how do you define success for yourself and your family?
So success looks a lot different for me by definition today than it did 15, 20 years ago. I used to define success by a lot of things that I realized later didn't matter. Uh, Money was the first one that used to be the driver for me and the success definer for me. And so did likability. That was something that I always strived for. I heard a great quote recently that spoke to disappointment, and it spoke to it's okay really to I'm trying to think of how the quote went exactly. Oh, your job is to disappoint as many people along the way as you have to in order that you don't disappoint yourself,
Mm,
or so long as you don't disappoint yourself. And I think that was my misunderstanding of what real success should be and is, was centered around so much of what others stole, and what things look like from an appearance perspective. Today, it looks a lot different for me. Success today is not self-focused; it's others. I mean, I define success by how the people around me that I have influence over or influence with are doing, how they're doing personally, most importantly, how they're doing in their marriages, how they're doing in their relationships, how are they doing impacting their communities and groups they're a part of. And how are they doing here vocationally, or if I'm mentoring anybody outside of here? That's to me, that says, hey, Mike, you're starting to experience more success when the others you're around are doing well also.
yeah,
So that's really how I define it today. Grayson.
I love it. I love it. So one last question. Actually, I have two more
Yeah.
questions for you before we wrap up. Um, what's one thing that you sitting here today wish that 22-year-old Mike Baas knew stepping out of Western Kentucky that would have saved you a lot of headache and heartache along the way?
Such a good question. Um, it's okay to say no.
Mm,
It's okay to say no. I spent so much time, Grayson, saying yes to every, because I thought that's what you had to. Every yes takes away from something else. And I just said yes to way too many things, and I couldn't focus and be great at the things that mattered to me because I was saying yes to a lot of things that didn't. And that takes a lot of different forms. But no is a healthy word, and it's a respected position too, if handled the right way. Uh, I don't know anybody that's gotten upset with me in the last several years if I've said, "Hey, Grayson, I'm sorry, I can't attend this event with you," or
Yeah.
"I can't sponsor this, but here's what I would like to do."
Yeah.
So I think that's it. I think preserving your time by the ability to tell people no in a respectful way would have served me so well 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I think it ends up, and again, I'm a few years younger than you, but I've started to sense the same tension, right? Where it's like you get spread thin, you get asked, to do a variety of different things. And the ability to say no, I believe it becomes a skill, right? It's like you have to, you're what you just alluded to. It's again, you're saying yes to things. Well, you're saying no to something else that may be more important, maybe more impactful than what you've actually said yes to. And, I know people that I really respect that they've at times become so spread thin that they actually have a specific process that they go through when they're asked to do anything. And it has to check certain boxes in order for them to say yes now, just because again, it's, we only have a certain amount of time. And, I'm a firm believer that, time is our greatest asset. And, from a relational standpoint too, specifically when when success is measured now by relationships and how people are doing and things like that. Well, the beautiful thing about relationships is that it takes time, and so like when you're pouring into these people, it's a significant amount of time and, sweat equity and relational equity that has to be poured into those people in order to, you know, in order to impact them, I know the way that you want to. So I appreciate you mentioning that because I think that, as people continue on throughout life saying no, it feels yucky probably at the start, but stepping into a place that again, what you're saying no to is actually you're saying yes to things that, may be more important on the back end.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I was listening to several years ago. I can't even tell you how long. Tim Ferriss, his podcast, and there's one of his mentors, a gentleman by the name of Derek Sivers. And Derek Sivers had this comment when they were talking about the importance and just the cost of time and the value of time. And Derek Sivers has a quote that's in relation to anything he's ever asked. He said, "It's either a hell yes or a no. And if it's not a hell yes, then
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, how brilliant is that?" And it's so
Yeah.
simple. Sometimes we let the little yeses take us away from some of the most important things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we wrap up, one last question. This is not a financial podcast, as now you are aware, but you also know that I am a finance guy. So I like to throw in a little bit of fun finance as we wrap up. Do you remember the first thing that you ever saved for as a young man?
Man, I didn't see this question coming. The first thing I ever saved for as a young man. Wow, I do. Uh, it was, I was working at Kroger in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I saved for a used set of golf clubs. The
Nice.
first ever set of King Cobra irons that they put out.
Nice.
That's the first thing I ever saved for.
I love it. I love it. Well, I know that you are a golfer. It's funny. In a previous interview that I did, that individual also said that the first thing that they saved for was a set of golf clubs. And you're a pretty good golfer. I actually just got new sticks. And so for those that aren't a golfer, getting new golf clubs is like Christmas morning. So it is a big deal if a golfer gets new golf clubs. So I know that was, I'm sure, a massive impact on you when you were finally able to swing them.
So good. Still is today, right? I mean,
Yep. That's right. 100%. 100%. Well, Mike, thanks so much for your time today and really your wisdom and sharing of your story. It's, it's just very evident that, you've been through a lot, but you've also accomplished a lot. I think there's so many things that, our listeners can glean from hearing you share today. So I appreciate your friendship, but I also appreciate you taking the time to spend it with us this afternoon. So thank you.